Welcome to another Leica Conversations. My name is Dan Tamarkin. I'd like to introduce Mr. Richard Sexton, who is from Louisiana. He's based in New Orleans, and he is a master printer and a photographer whose work I admire very much. And by way of introduction, let me just say a few things. He's been published in all kinds of magazines. Really, the list is too long to go into. He's published many books. I want to show you a few here. Let's see here. Lost my frame, but I think you guys can see this. This is New Orleans, Elegance and Decadence. When was this done?
It was first published in 1993. This is the new 30th anniversary edition, which just came out this year. So it's been in print for 30 years, which
Awesome.
is kind of pretty incredible for a book of this type.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah, the list of books is a little bit too long to get into, but I just want to show you a few of the titles. This is An Enigmatic Stream, Industrial Landscapes from the Lower Mississippi River. But tonight, we're going to talk about his latest book, but I want to mention a couple of books like Creole World, Photographs of New Orleans and the Latin Caribbean Sphere, Vestiges of Grandeur, Plantations of Louisiana's River Road. There have been many museum exhibitions and gallery shows. If you find yourself in New Orleans, you can find some of his work at A Gallery on Charter Street. And so we're just thrilled to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thanks for having me. It's great to be
my
in
pleasure.
Chicago.
Right on. It's not too cold for you.
No.
It's all right. The weather's
It's
pretty
cold.
good.
It's cold by New Orleans standards, but by Chicago standards, this is
It's not too
great
bad,
for
right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're going to touch on some more of the work that you've done and some of the projects that you've done, but I think it's important to note that your work has been collected by a number of different museums and galleries, and it's kind of exciting to have you here with us talking about the Leica, which is one of the cameras that you use.
Right.
Medium format, large format as well, right?
During the film era in particular, I was shooting mostly with a view camera.
Yeah.
6x9 format, 120 film, and 4x5.
Okay.
But I also shot 35. I had an M6 back in the day. Some of the photographs and the vestiges, that book that you mentioned, were shot with the M6 in conjunction with the larger format cameras. So I've always used a Leica for certain things, and now it's really my primary camera.
And so are you shooting film now?
Rarely. I do shoot film. I still have, I'm set up in the digital lab, one little corner, which has a little sign that says Scuola Vecchia, old school, for processing film. And I can process 35 to 4x5 film there. But I don't print in the chemical darkroom any longer. First thing I do with the film is scan it.
Yeah.
And print it digitally.
Okay. The printing is absolutely fantastic. If you get a chance to look at any of his prints. Well, we've got I want to show some of Richard's work, and I want to show you also, we have a presentation for you. But first, I want to just tell you a little bit about Richard's new book, 74 a Year, M4, that's the Leica M4, a camera, and Latin America, a road trip. And so as we begin, I'm going to share my screen a little bit and show you some slides and that hopefully you will enjoy. And we'll begin talking about this fabulous new book. I want to read to you a little bit from Richard's website about 74 M4 Latin America. This is a photographic memoir by Mr. Richard Sexton. When he was 20 years old, he made a road trip from Georgia, where he grew up and was living at the time, to Bolivia and back. Over a 6-month period in 1974, he traveled overland to every country in Central America, to Roatan Island in the Caribbean, and to Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia in South America. And this would be his first major photographic project. And so this book is named after the trip. And I just want to remind you all that you're welcome to ask questions, so please do. And so this is his new book, which is beautifully printed. It's a really, really gorgeous book, and it has a lot of very interesting photographs from the road trip itself. And we're going to look at some of the photographs that he made, but I would urge you to take a look at his website and get the book too, because it's fantastic. So here's a little information about how you can reach us and Leica Camera. Are you on Instagram? You're not on Instagram, but you have a terrific website.
I'm not on any social media. Now, my gallery reps are, in many cases, and publishers certainly all are.
Right.
So I kind of let them do do all that stuff, and I stay in the background.
Right on. So this is the title, 74 a year, M4 camera, Latin America, a road trip. And so here, I hope you don't mind, I'm starting with, just so people can locate you and
Yes,
this. So here is Richard in 1974. You had just graduated Emory.
No,
or you were about to.
I was about to. I came back. I had one more. What was it? Quarter system at that time to graduate, and so I was away for a quarter. Took summer off, fall quarter, and did the 6-month trip. But so I was about to graduate, but I wasn't quite there yet.
And tell me about the idea for the trip.
Well, I wanted to be a photographer. I grew up in a small town in southwest Georgia called 1,800 people. So of course, we don't have any art galleries or art museums or any of that. No
Right.
town of 1,800 does. But what I did have and what influenced me were all the big picture magazines that my parents subscribed to in the 60s when I was in school. And This Is Life and Look and National Geographic and a lot of others. And I could not imagine anything more glamorous and exciting than working for those magazines and traveling all over the world. But I needed to prove that I could do it. I mean, I had never really been anywhere. Miami was the furthest place away that I had been, and Atlanta was the only other city. I was in school there, and so Georgia, Florida, Alabama. I hadn't traveled beyond that, and I thought that I've got to do something about this, because I thought that certainly if you're going to be a photographer, incorporating travel into it was an important thing. For the kind of photography that I wanted to do. So I needed to see if I could do it.
Right.
Because it looked like it would be fun. And for a 19-year-old to say, okay, I'm going to grab 2 college buddies and we're going to get in a Datsun station wagon and drive to Bolivia and back. That had disaster written all over it, But, it worked. I made it there and back. And all kinds of little disasters happened along the way, but managed to keep shooting and came back with, I can't remember now the total, but it was many rolls of black and white film that I shot on the trip. And that became my first portfolio, really, is the photographs from this trip. And then things started to happen very quickly after this. I moved to San Francisco in '77. I launched a career after sort of a failed art school experience. And all of this project lingered on the back shelf for a long, long time, because it was an early thing that I did. But it came to have a lot of influence. It certainly influenced where I lived in New Orleans. It influenced Creole World, a later project that's fairly recent. These photographs became more meaningful. Because of what I had done afterwards. I did become a photographer. I didn't travel the world quite as extensively as I envisioned, but I did to a degree. And I did, as the big picture magazines faded somewhat, they were replaced by book publishers. who were doing photo books, and I was particularly successful in the 80s when I first became involved with that, and the 90s. Not selling as much now as they did before the internet came along.
Right.
But so it went back to this. It went back to this trip.
Yeah.
So this book is really a memoir of how I became a photographer. It wasn't a conventional way to do it.
Right.
But it's a way that works it worked for me. And I think many other photo enthusiasts have a similar story to tell.
Yeah.
Of their own interest in photography, and they first, and people have said that about this project.
Yeah.
Oh, I spent the summer in Guatemala,
Yeah.
when I was 19 and I was in college, and how that was a formative experience in their life. And maybe it wasn't for photography, it could have been for writing or other things. It was actually a writer who mentioned this to me. So that those early experiences in places that are not your own backyard, they're very influential.
Yeah, I agree. I love the idea that you knew there was a road that could take you all the way from where you live down to Tierra del Fuego.
Yeah.
Del Fuego.
Yes.
And you said,
I didn't make it that far.
I know, but still, that's a really long trip. So if you can envision it going from Atlanta west and then south through Mexico City, all the way through Central America, leaving your car in Panama.
Because there's no road.
Because there's no roads.
There's still no road.
And I want to tell you folks that the book has some terrific text in it, which is how I know a little bit about your road trip, because as you can see, I marked some pages, and there's some of the text that's here is terrific. And so I'm going to share my screen again in a moment. In part because you'll get tired of looking at my mug. I mean, let's see some of his pictures. But I just want to talk about this, that the images that we're going to look at tonight are all from the book, from this project and from the book. And these images are enduring evidence of this long, tenuous road trip. They were made between June 26th and November 30th of 1974. The first images were made in New Orleans, the only planned stop in North America, and all the others were made south of the Rio Grande. And so the images that we're going to look are more or less in the sequence that they were made. And so we're gonna show these, and our gallery exhibit echoes this, where as you make your way across the exhibit, you're actually following along kind of some of these touch points of the journey. And it's just one of my favorite things about, as if the photos aren't great enough, the writing is really excellent as well. So let's take a look at some of these photographs. I'm going to share my screen real quick here. And I wanted to give you an idea. This is Richard, and also a lunch, I think a lunch table, right?
That's one of my travel buddies there, pontificating over lunch in Mexico, a Rocky car. We still do trips together to this day.
You do?
Yeah. Not in a
not like this one.
Not like this one. They're a little more refined than that, but
I just love this because it kind of says road trip to me. So in this book are not only the photographs that Richard made, but there's also the story of the three different legs of the road trip and of his buddies, Hawk and Rocky.
Yeah,
I think it's just terrific. So let's take a look at some pictures, and I'd love it if you tell us a little something about them. So these were made with the M4. You'll notice that there are some lenses. There's three or four lenses maybe that we.
I got a fourth in Panama. I got
the wide
one. I got the really wide lens. I had a 35, 50, and 90. That was the kit.
It's the classic kit.
That was the kit.
So all you viewers at home, see if you can spot the 21 Super Angulon. This is Siesta.
Yes.
And forgive me, I have looked at these a lot, but I don't have the names memorized.
Oh, I know, and my memory wavers a little bit too. That is on the Pacific coast in Mexico, a place called La Ventosa.
La Ventosa.
And there is the proprietor. I think the hammocks were I can't remember if they were a quarter a night or 50 cents.
Or 50 cents a night, yeah.
And you just were on this hut right on the beach that's just open to the outdoors. And you just rented a hammock for the night.
I love
and
it.
He was napping in the afternoon when I caught him. I was shooting from my hammock to his.
That's great.
This is in Chichicastenango in Guatemala, which is famous for its Saturday market. And that was a scene from the chapel there. There's 3 main churches, at least at that time there were in Chichi. That's one of them. That's Calvario.
One of the great things about this book is that it's a really interesting mix of market scenes, street scenes. There's a lot of really beautiful landscapes. As you might imagine, Richard made it to Machu Picchu, and we'll see some photographs. I added some other photographs into our presentation, so hopefully we'll get a chance to look at them. So 35, 50, 90, and eventually a 21 Super Angulon. I think there people are a little curious about what's on the table here. So because we're all into Leica, or a lot of us are into Leica, let's pause for a moment and talk about the gear.
Okay.
Hang on, I have to remember to stop sharing my screen so that you folks can see. So what we have here is, this is not the Leica that you had. This is a subsequent.
This is a recreation. I had to sell my kit in the 80s. I needed money to buy a view camera. So I sold all the gear that I had in the Latin America trip of '74. But then, kind of in a fit of nostalgia, about 15 years ago, I bought an M4, same vintage as I had before.
Same year. Yeah.
Same year, same everything.
Yeah.
And the 35 and 50, 90 vintage lenses, just so I could, I felt kind of something was missing.
Yeah.
And that was one of my big regrets, is having to sell that gear at the time. I thought long and hard about it, but I was wanting to do architectural photography at that time. The Leica was not, I could have used it for certain things, but I needed a view camera.
Yeah.
I needed a 4x5. So I had to sacrifice the Leica. So I've sort of tried to get it back.
Yeah, it sure looks like it. I mean, it's all vintage.
This is a strap that I didn't have until the next year. When I came back, I had this strap made in it's a braided strap that I got at a hippie leather shop.
Yeah. I noticed when I was playing around with your camera before, I hope you don't mind, I have to touch all the Leicas. I can't help myself. There's film in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
So you might have taken some interesting photos.
You know what? I in my work, I've learned not to touch the shutter on people's cameras because they're very often loaded.
Yeah, you just tested the rewind crank to see. Huh?
Exactly. That's my trick, is that I'll just touch and see if there's tension there. Then I know that the camera's loaded, and I'm not gonna mess around with it. Although I have been known to pick up people's cameras and take pictures of them. Usually they're pretty good pictures, if I do say so myself. So one of the things that's kind of, I think, is interesting about this trip and looking at it now is how different travel was at that time. I mean, and you talk a little bit about that in the book, where, there's cash, there's American Express traveler's checks. Credit cards aren't really, I mean, who has a credit card? Nobody would accept them. Yeah, nobody would take them. And you run out of money, and you got to get somebody to Western Union you some money. So now, how was your Spanish in 1974? Did you speak a little?
It was, yes, I was conversational, sounded very poor. If you're familiar with David Sedaris's book, Me Talk Pretty One Day, that's how my Spanish sounds. I was very entertaining to the Latinos.
What about Rocky and Hawk? Did either of those fellas speak Spanish?
Hawk almost, very little. Rocky spoke, his Spanish was a little better than mine, actually. So we were able to get by with what we had, which you kind of had to do.
Yeah.
And it was, if you didn't speak a little bit of Spanish, you pull into some little town and that's near nightfall and you need a place to stay and you got to find
Right.
something, and there really aren't any hotels. There's just Pizzion, or maybe somebody's got a couple of rooms
Right.
that they let out. They hadn't discovered tourism.
Right.
At that type of tourism. Now in the big cities, they had nice hotels.
Yeah.
For a very different kind of traveler than we were.
Right.
But they hadn't discovered cultural tourism and youth travel and all that.
Right.
Not quite there yet.
Yeah. So it must have been a big adventure. All right.
Oh,
so
definitely.
I keep forgetting that. I'm so anxious to share your photographs that I share my screen and then we start talking. But let's go back to photos for a moment. So how did people react to you with your camera? Were you able to take pictures? Were people accepting of it?
They're not always, but the problem with asking someone if you can take their picture is they're now going to pose for you.
Right.
They're going to project.
It kind of ruins the moment.
I wanted to capture, the very first photo book I bought was The World of Henri Cartier-Bresson.
Yeah.
And I loved it. Well, that's the reason I bought an M4, is because I started looking at these photographers' work that I really liked, and I said, okay, what are they shooting with?
Right.
And they're shooting the Leica M's, a lot of them. And I thought, well, there's got to be something to this. And it is. The camera doesn't look like a professional camera. It didn't in 1974.
Right.
The people I was photographing, they really couldn't tell. It looked a little bit, it had been 20 years since that was the primary type of camera that a photojournalist would have had. They had switched to SLRs by that point.
Right.
So it did kind of look like, and there were also, rangefinder cameras that were made by a variety of manufacturers. It had a fixed lens, sort of like the point and shoot cameras that we refer to today. So the M4 in that era looked like it might have been something like that. So it's less intimidating because it doesn't look like something that a professional photojournalist.
And when you point it at someone, they're not really even thinking.
They're thinking it's something.
It's a kid taking a picture, right?
Yeah.
Well, I love this. I think that in your book you talk about, in some of the text, the book is mainly photographs, but there's some terrific text. I wanted to capture a broader range of subjects: grit, squalor, the human condition, far removed from where the tourist trod, even though I was, in fact, a tourist. And I ultimately photographed many of the same places all the other tourists did. I think watermelon on your bed is a pretty good example of not taking the regular tourist photo. But I understand exactly what you mean.
We bought that. I love the bed there. That was the hotel room we were staying in La Ceiba, Honduras. And I sort of liked that setting, but it felt like it kind of needed something. We had bought that watermelon earlier that afternoon by the side of the road. People were selling watermelons. So we had it in the room. And so I just put it on the bed as, I'm experimenting. I was 20 years old and learning how to be a photographer.
Yeah.
So I don't do a lot of setups like that, but that's one instance where I did. Yeah,
I love it. It is in some ways very much like a lot of your landscapes, but in this book, but it's also very much unlike many of the other photographs you took. I'm crazy about this picture. I think it's fabulous.
Yeah, that's another thing that I learned to do on this trip. And you had mentioned asking people to photograph.
Yeah.
Now see, I'm on the porch of a hotel, little wood frame building, and there are two guys talking on the street by their truck. So they don't even see me up there. And the Leica M shutter was the quietest shutter there was at that time. Doesn't make much noise at all. So they really don't even hear it. They don't know that a picture is being made.
Yeah.
And I just happen to catch the gesture as they're talking.
It's fantastic. Just the thing he's doing, whatever it is he's doing with his hand, is terrific, and we've got nice echoes. We have nice echoes of the circles and both the
And
hands.
that wood that you see coming.
Yeah.
That's the floorboards of the porch.
Yeah.
I couldn't
That's
keep
terrific.
those up.
Right. Well, and I think, sometimes, and I think it's pretty obvious that almost all of these shots are extemporaneous, and they're just nobody's being posed. Nothing is being posed.
Yeah, it's found.
And it's all
situation.
found stuff. Yeah. Absolutely. I love it. I also really like this because everybody's having such a fabulous time. And I've actually personally never been in a bumper car, but I know exactly what it's like.
Yeah. Well, and this was just I asked someone, like, Fera con huevos, a fair with rides.
Yeah.
But it's like, at least in the South, we would call that a fair. It's not a circus, but it was a traveling thing.
Yep.
We drive by on a dirt road, and in this little town that was Euskaron, they've got this fair going on. So we just stop because it's a good photo op.
Yeah.
Let's see what they're doing. And I got 2 or 3 really great pictures there.
Yeah, this is great stuff. I mean, it's just got the energy. Everybody's got energy, even the people in the crowd.
That was the same.
This is the same fair.
Same fair.
Okay. I mean, I love sideshow stuff like this. I just think it's terrific. And I love it that guy is just standing there, just hanging out.
Yeah.
Just hanging out. I can only imagine what it's like when this ride is open and when they're actually taking people in.
This is in Panama City.
In Panama City.
This is El Chorrillo is the neighborhood, and it's near Casco Viejo, which is their historic district. This is sort of the poorer section, adjacent, but very evocative of the French Quarter of New Orleans.
Absolutely.
It's much like that. You can sort of see, and those sort of comparisons became a feature of Creole World. I'm photographing New Orleans and then places in Latin America, and you're getting confused even about where you are. So similar. Yeah.
Some of the first work of yours that I saw was the color work of interior of New Orleans homes.
Oh yeah, and which is in Elegance and Decadence.
Which is in Elegance and Decadence. It's just fantastic stuff. Fantastic. The textures, the colors. I mean, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I just want to read a quick quote here. Why the camera mattered to me, and this is something Henri Cartier-Bresson said, and this appears towards the end of your book. Why the camera mattered to me. Shooting with the Leica is like a long, tender kiss, like firing an automatic pistol, like an hour on the analyst's couch. I just love that. It's a little bit of everything.
There is.
I just love it. So I think one of the things about this book is the notion of witness and the idea that you wanted to photograph what you saw. And I think that a lot of what we see in this book is this idea of being a witness. And in this instance, it is being a Leica witness because we're using a Leica camera, and also a lot of the images in this book, and we're going to see more. Let's look at some more images right now while I'm gabbing at you. A lot of the images in this book, they have this somewhat timeless, anachronistic feel, and there's the Spanish colonial architecture, this neoclassical architecture, and Baroque.
The other thing to at this point in time, going to Latin America was like going back in time.
Yeah.
Because I thought at that time, I would not say that I feel this way today, but I thought post-war American suburbia and the strip malls and the chain restaurants, all of that was boring.
Yeah.
Visually. I mean, I didn't feel like I knew how to make good pictures of that.
Right.
But you go to Latin America and they're living closer to the earth. and there's no fast food anywhere.
Right.
There's you know, no chains. There's no McDonald's.
Right.
There's no nothing at that time. Now that's changed.
No, it's definitely changed.
That
Yeah.
has definitely changed. But in 1974, you were really able to go back in time when you went to these places and you photographed there. And see, I was admiring photographers who had come before me, like Kudelka with his gypsies in Eastern Europe, and Cartier-Bresson's work. And it was kind of lost on me at the time, but these were images that were, in some cases, taken decades, ago.
Oh yeah.
But the picturesque quality of these places just captivated me, and you found that in Latin America, pervasively. There was a market in Ipiales near the Ecuadorian border. Yeah. And I didn't even know that was going to be there. I arrived in a bus late at night, got a room at the hotel. I got waked up in the morning, there was all this racket. And I looked out my window straight down, and that's what I saw. The market was underway, and I didn't even know that was there. And so I could shoot from above, and again, nobody is even aware that they're being photographed.
And did you make your way down? I imagine as soon as you took a couple, made your way down there and started walking around in the crowd.
Yeah, but I just looked onto that. It's just a matter of immersing yourself in that world, and things are going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I find this is one of the things that I really like. You don't say this explicitly in the book, but I get the feeling it's kind of similar when you're traveling. When one is traveling, if one is open and curious, all kinds of amazing things happen. I mean, it's true that anything can happen, and sometimes people have bad experiences too. But I've found when I travel that if I'm open and curious and I'm talking to people, even if it's just little things, then the world really opens up to you.
Right, and I think you want to immerse yourself in their world.
Absolutely.
If you stay at Club Med, the fancy tourist hotels,
right,
those are kept separate from the middle and working class people that live there, and who are it's their culture you came to see.
Yeah.
So if you stay where they stay and live in their neighborhoods and eat in their cafes, even though you may sometimes get a meal that's not to your liking,
right?
But you're in that environment.
Yeah.
And that gives you the opportunity to take photographs. There I'm watching the Independence Day parade in Guayaquil in Ecuador. Again, had no idea that was going to be a celebration that day.
Yeah.
Arrived in town the day before, and we're having this big, huge parade, and everything's closed. So okay, let's go photograph.
So did you bring all the film that you used?
Yes.
You brought everything with you?
I had 100-foot rolls of Tri-X, and I had a bulk loader and the little cassette, and it's a daylight film loader, and that's all the black. And I had a couple of rolls of Panatomic X, which I saved for Machu Picchu.
Yup.
And I would occasionally shoot color, because I would take normal tourist pictures of some of the places, and what I would do, I only had the one camera. So you see how many frames you've shot. You rewind it, but not all the way into the cut. You mark it with a Sharpie.
Yep. Say
25 frames. So you shoot a roll of color, then you put the black and white back in.
Yep.
And you, with the body cap on and 1,000th of a second shutter speed, advance a couple frames past 25.
Yep. And there you go.
You shoot the rest of the roll.
Yeah.
10 more frames or whatever. So that's what I did. So it's constantly, taking film out
and
putting it back in. It's totally different than shooting today.
Oh yeah, and anyone who's curious about this process and maybe doesn't understand it, I'm happy to explain it and make a video. This is something I used to do all the time. So I know you have to. Yeah.
One of the reasons that you would see working professionals with like 3 cameras hung around their neck is because they've got a slower speed black and white, maybe a high speed black and white, maybe color.
Right, and maybe color.
And because they don't have time to be
right.
changing. I mean, you've got to have 3 cameras there.
That's right, because the moment will be gone.
And also, sometimes it's all the same film, but you've got 3 different lenses on there. Zoom lenses were not very good.
There was no, yeah.
So everybody used primes, and so you'd have maybe a 9-8 and a 35.
Yeah.
On there.
Yeah.
And then you would switch between it, and you didn't have time to change lenses.
Right.
You had them ready to go.
And so sometimes people wonder, like, wow, pros, man, they beat up their cameras. Well,
you walk around with 3 cameras down around your neck, and you see what they look like after 5 years.
That's right. That's right. Or when you're working for a magazine, you've got it. It's not like all of a sudden you see that perfect moment. You take the picture, give it to your editor, and cash the check. You make hundreds of pictures and look at contact sheets. Yeah. And the editor says, I like this one and I like this one, the rest are garbage. And you hope, or whatever they say, right. And you hope that they use them. And so you have to be taking a lot of,
you have to take a lot, and you're not getting that feedback loop. You're not able to jump. You're not seeing right away what you're getting. So you have to shoot more, you have to bracket more to be able.
And bracketing.
Yeah.
Right.
Make sure you got it.
I imagine that you kept all of your exposed film with you. Like, were you processing on the road?
I did for Central America when I had the car.
Yeah. Okay.
We had a little wooden box with developing tanks and reels and chemicals in there, and I would process it in load the film in a changing bag, process it in the bathroom at the hotel,
right,
and hang it up to dry on a curtain rod.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. And there's no GPS. It's all maps. You'd never been there before.
No.
Nobody said, hey, take a left at the cow or at the church or anything like that. No. Take a left and you'll go straight down to La Paz. You're gonna find your way. That's what's one of the things.
We actually used filling station route maps.
Oh yeah.
They would get like I got some of those before leaving because you could order those from like Texaco or I think mine were Texaco.
Right.
And the guidebook would have some rough maps in it.
Did you ever get to a point where, like, well, before Panama City, before you turned into a hiker, did you get to a point where the road just ended or you had no idea which way to go?
Oh yeah, then you would have to ask somebody.
Yeah.
You would have to ask, and you'd have to ask in Spanish.
And you'd have to ask in Spanish. Yeah. I think it's incredibly brave. And I don't know if anybody's
like I say, it had disaster written all over it.
It had disaster written all over it. I mean, I think it's really brave. At 19 years old, at 25 years old, at 35 years, I think it's just a brave thing.
Yeah. And
so I'm just thrilled that you did this, and I can't wait to dive deeper into the photographs. A lot of scenes, scenes.
That's the Peruvian coast in North Peru near Trujillo, north of Lima. That's the same area.
And this reminds me of the watermelon.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's shot with the 21.
That's the 21 Super Angulon. Yeah, you see how wide it is.
The stone is really close, and that old truck is not that far away, but with the 21, it really seems like this. It really
just giant space.
It expands the landscape. Yeah.
And then when I think it's true of wider angle lenses in general, but especially super wide like the 21. And then when you use it in closer confines, while it does create some distortion sometimes, you get that sense of immediacy and involvement for the viewer.
It's a great lens when you're inside in a really compact space. Like one of the earlier shots that Mark had seen in Cartagena, where I'm just right in the thick of it.
Yep.
That shot with the 21.
I love shooting with wide angles. Also, you don't have to worry about focus quite as much as you would with a 35 or a 50.
There was an earthquake while I was in Peru, and this is the aftermath in Lima. People were gathering their belongings. You can see that There,
Yeah.
the building has collapsed behind the facade.
Yes.
In the back.
Yeah, because it looks like the
They're
facade.
trying to salvage what they can from their homes that were destroyed by the quake.
This is one of my favorite images.
Yeah, I was just walking. I was walking to an archaeological site that we heard about. I was stranded there. There was a bridge out, and we were stuck in Ayacucho for like 5 days waiting for the plane. It was a plane once a week.
Yeah.
So we're looking for things to do. So it turned out to be further than we thought it was going to be. So we walked miles out of town in the mountains to this site, and that's something I came on
I just love it, and I think it's fortuitous that person was sitting up on that rock.
Oh yeah, it was. Totally,
I mean, that's terrific.
That was totally luck.
So when you were preparing this book, or in the years after creating it, when everything was kind of shelved, what did you have any discoveries in these photographs? Like, did you look at some of these photographs that you took in 1974 and said, "Wow, that was a really good photograph. I forgot I took this one." Or
yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah,
I think the photographs became more valuable to me.
Yeah.
Once this trip became something that had happened long ago in my youth.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think I would have still felt similarly, even if, say, I didn't become a photographer and I became a stockbroker or something else. It still would have been this really formative event in my life. And it verified to me, I always felt that being well-traveled was just as important, maybe even more important than being well-educated.
Yeah.
It's like the ability to speak another language, to have traveled to places that are outside your kind of home environment. It is just such a valuable experience. And to be able to learn how to be a photographer out of that too is just, you know.
So so there's a few, I'm just looking at a few of your questions. Did you do any hitchhiking after you left the car in Panama?
Well, not intentional hitchhiking. Occasionally, I mean, it's like, even in Mexico, the car broke down.
Yeah.
On a back road. We were trying to get to this place called La Pesca, which is on the coast. We just saw it on the map and thought, oh, let's go there.
Let's go there. Right. I love it.
Well, the car broke down, so we had these guys with a truck and like 6 or 8 workers in the back, you know, pick us up. And I think they towed the car for a little bit. I can't remember what the exact outcome was, but we had to do that. Then you would, they had what they call taxi colectivos, where you just go to this little office, like a filling station kind of a place, and they have a chalkboard of places where there's a driver that would go. But you have to wait until the car fills.
Right.
Because they're not going to go until
they're not going to take just
money.
You.
Yeah.
Right.
They're not going to take just you. So there's a fee, and then you have to wait there. So you might wait all morning and then finally fill it up and off you go.
Right.
And so things like that, yeah.
So I also really like this photograph a lot as well. I just love just the texture. I love the grass.
And the guy reading the paper.
And the guy reading the paper,
that's a direct part.
So Machu Picchu, that was part of the goal to begin with, right?
As I was conceiving of this as something that I wanted to do, that was sort of the pinnacle of the trip.
Yeah.
Was to get to Peru, to Machu Picchu. I ended up going all the way to Bolivia just as a kind of a circumstance, went as far as La Paz before turning around.
Yeah.
But in my mind, it was to get there.
I've always wanted to
So
go.
since we lost everybody, we may want to go back.
Yeah, so we're going to go back. Thanks again for bearing with us. So this picture, it's very much like Henri Cartier-Bresson.
Yes, and I think we were on when we were discussing this, but we lost it.
Yeah, and then I think, yeah, shortly afterward,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, and it's just got Henri Cartier-Bresson all over it. And you know, one of the things, I think this is probably about when we cut out. If any of you have ever gotten a chance to take a Leica Academy, which I strongly recommend, wherever it is, wherever you are, if you travel, whatever you do, one of the things that one of the instructors, Tom Smith, says, you set the stage and wait for the actors to arrive.
There you go.
Which is very similar, and I just love it. I hope I'm not giving away too much. But I'll tell you that going to a Leica Academy is like drinking from the fire hose. It's terrific what you learn and who you meet, and it's wonderful. But you're talking about Henri Cartier-Bresson and this scene and just waiting for the gentleman with the paper to enter it.
Or someone.
Or someone.
It could be a little kid running. You don't know what it's gonna be.
You never know. Yeah, it could be anyone. But that really does kind of complete it. It's like the rugged.
And I would say this about these images in general. If you look through the book, you can sort of see what the influences were. In this case, like you say, that looks like that could be a Cartier-Bresson photograph. Well, that's not an accident. I admired the work. One of the things that you do when you're learning photography, and this is certainly done in painting as well, old master copies. If you want to learn to be a painter, go look at a painting that you admire and see if you can paint
That's
it.
right.
And you're just copying it. You're just copying it.
That's right.
So you're not creating something that's original in any sense, but you're seeing if you can master the technique that painter used.
Yes.
And in the process, you learn how to paint. So that's part of the learning process is old master copies.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the photographic version of it. I admiring all these photographs of other photographers that were taken sort of a few decades before me.
Yeah.
So I go to a locale that has that rich history to it.
Yeah.
And still very evocative of the past. And I'm seeing if I can create something that maybe looks like Cartier-Bresson could have taken.
Yeah, I think you did. I think you did it with this. Absolutely.
It's how I learned photography.
I think that's a really important idea, is this idea of emulating other photographers.
To start. Don't
do
it.
Yeah. Not as a career.
You got to grow
but to
out
start.
of it.
I mean, I was trained as a writer and a poet, and one of the first things that we did in kind of the lower level workshops were emulate other poets and emulate other writers.
See if you can write in that style.
In that style, and in doing so, you learn how to write, just in the same way that you learn how to photograph. Machu Picchu is so beautiful.
And notice there are no tourists there.
There's
nobody there.
Yeah.
We had to climb up there was like a barracks-like spot down at the bottom. We just rented a bed in a big room, and you would have to walk up. Now, a couple of times a day, a tour bus from Cusco would show up and drive up. But if you avoided when they were there, it was pretty vacant for the rest of the time.
It's amazing. Look how sharp it is. I mean, it's just
that was shot with Panatomic. The lighting's good.
Yup.
I used a yellow filter on that.
Yup. Fabulous. I just love.
That's Mexico.
Yup.
I went to Mexico City in the car.
Yeah, I just think it's a terrific photograph. So these are photographs that I selected outside of, they're from the book, but outside of the actual road trip. I just love this. I love the nature.
An abandoned church that we just saw beside the road.
Yeah.
We stopped.
And you can see that Spanish colonial and that influence.
And it was in the middle. It wasn't in a little village. It was just there, out in the countryside.
Yeah.
It was a country church. Boxers. And this is in Belize.
In Belize, okay.
A guy he was a tourist hustler kind of guy who said, "Hey, come watch me box." Turns out he wasn't a very good boxer, but I got some interesting photographs at the boxing club there in Belize.
Yeah,
And
that's great. I chose a couple of these
yeah,
because I think the body language is terrific.
the guy walking down the steps and the guy who's
Yeah,
passed out on the steps, which you didn't see very much.
right.
That was kind of uncommon.
That's my experience in Latin America as well.
Yeah.
That's kind of uncommon. I think this is another one that's just very kind of, I imagine, I've never been to these places, but I imagine this is very evocative of a lot of the little villages that you
Yes,
visited.
that's Lanquin. That's a little village in the mountains. There's a heavily touristed spot now.
It is.
But it wasn't then.
Yeah.
It took forever. We had to drive on these back roads, dirt roads, gravel roads, through the mountains all day just to get there.
Wow. Now, Dwayne, actually, one of our viewers wants to know, have you thought about retracing your steps? Or
I've done a little bit of that.
You have?
Because when I worked on Creole World, I did go back to some of these places again.
Okay.
I returned to Cartagena, to Ecuador, and Colombia, to Panama again. And I also got to go to some new places. I got a license to go to Cuba.
Yes.
And for the first time, that was a place I never thought I'd get to go to. So yeah, I've gone back to a few. It would be fun to redo the whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's in the cards.
Maybe not a Datsun this time. Something a little with a better ride.
Well, it would be a Nissan now. Anyway.
Yeah, that's true, right?
Yeah,
that's right.
We wondered why it was so hazy on
Yeah.
the road, and we finally got within sight. That was a Fuego volcano had erupted.
Yeah.
So I saw earthquake in Lima, and then a volcanic eruption in Guatemala.
Wow.
That's another Machu Picchu.
Machu Picchu, yeah. I'll tell you, I had a hard time selecting some of these photographs because you gave me earlier today a whole bunch of like all the photographs in the book, and I just had a hard time selecting them. But it was really nice. It was really nice to see all of the photographs. I don't want to go too fast. More Machu Picchu. Yeah, it's just terrific
I spent 2
stuff.
days photographing there.
Yeah. Oh, I would too.
Yeah,
That's fantastic. So I want to make sure that we're not missing any questions. Right, okay. So, well, we're not quite done, but I'm going to hold my last couple of slides. So it would be nice to retrace your steps, I'm sure, but it's a long trip.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really long trip.
Sparing 6 months today is a little.
It's not so easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as I flip through the book, I will say that there are a bunch of photographs. I was like, oh, I want to include this one. I want to include this one. So I'm hoping that if any of you folks who are viewing are in the Chicagoland area, that you'll join us tomorrow night, because Richard will be here all weekend, or most of the weekend, and we have copies of the book, and I'll tell more stories, and you can see our gallery where we have many of these photographs on display. So if you're in the neighborhood, or if you have a mind to travel to Chicago tomorrow, come and join us tomorrow evening. It's terrific. I can't say enough good things about this book. I think.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, I did it for the reason that, I felt like other photographers would appreciate this sort of a project.
I sure do.
There's a lot of idealism and utopian thinking that went into doing something like this. I'm just very glad I did it then, when it was much easier than it is today. I can travel. I mean, I just got back from Uzbekistan, which was a fascinating trip. But I was there for like 10 days. I mean, that's kind of the time.
Only scratching the surface.
Yeah, because that's sort of the kind of time frame that I had.
Yeah, I'm thrilled that you brought these books because I can't wait to look at them. I've seen some of your work, but I'm really pleased to see more. And so I'm just thrilled. And I think that I think that for anyone who's interested in a project-based photography, or who is interested in travel or road tripping or Latin America or the Leica, I think this is a terrific book to begin your Richard Sexton collection with, because I think once you read this, they're gonna want more. And I don't know if any of our viewers are as big a fan of New Orleans as I am, but I just think that a lot of the work it's just absolutely spectacular, and it's so full of delicious textures and things that you don't typically see elsewhere. I mean, it's very different from what we're used to here in Chicago, but a lot of the interiors that Richard has done are really terrific. And if you get a chance to look at any of his books, I would urge you to. And so with that, I want to welcome anybody to ask any questions that you like. And I also want to welcome you as we kind of wind things down and answer your questions, that I'd also like to welcome you to contact us and to go to Richard's website. You'll be able to find his email there.
It's richardsextonstudio.com.
And we have, I'm going to leave a later slide up so that you can get all of our contact information. So tomorrow night is Richard's opening here in the Rangefinder Gallery. But I also wanted to let you know that we have a rare camera auction coming up. We always like to talk about what's next in these Leica conversations. So just in case we have any collectors or anybody that's curious about what a Leica auction is like, we urge you to get in touch with us and come and see our auction. But we really want to stay in touch. And we hope that you've enjoyed this talk. I've had a terrific time. I'm just thrilled that you're here in Chicago. It's wonderful. I'm so glad.
Thanks for sponsoring this. I mean, it's really a great thing.
It's my pleasure, man. It's what we love to do. This is really terrific. I just love having you here. So thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of the Leica conversation. But let me leave this slide up for a moment or two so you can record Richard's email or website address, and you'll be able to contact him through his website there. And take a look around at the website. It's got a ton of stuff. And as soon as you wheel around a little bit on his website, you'll get a sense of the phenomenal breadth and scope of the photographs that he takes. So
yeah, there's a lot of stuff up there.
It's a lot of stuff, man.
I know. Well, hey, in 50 years, you ought to. That's a lot for that.
You make some pictures in 50 years.
50 years is a long time to be doing this, and I'm still at it. So
I love it.
I tell everybody I'm on the Keith Richards retirement plan, which is you pedal to the metal until the car just won't crank.
That's right. I love it. Well, definitely the next time I'm in New Orleans, I'm going to look you up.
Yes.
And I'd love to see more of your work. And I'm definitely going to enjoy these books while I'm here. And I want to share more of Richard's work and his contact information and anything that you all might be curious about. So whether we have any questions at this time or later on, I hope that you'll reach out to Leica, to Tamarkin, to Richard, anywhere you like, and get your questions answered. Talk with other people who are interested in travel and interested in Leica, and get yourself a camera, even if it's one of these things. Get yourself a camera and get out there and take some pictures, because before you know it, you may also have a fabulous trip with a couple of great friends and new friends that we made along the way that needs to be recorded. And so once again, thank you for being here, but really a hearty congratulations on a terrific, terrific book that speaks to people like me who love to travel, people like me who love to take photographs, and also people like me who love Latin America. So
yes.
It's terrific.
That's one of the great things about photography too, It's a wonderful way to experience the world.
Yeah.
And that could be your backyard, it could be the city or town that you live in, or it could be halfway around the world.
Yeah,
It
it's
just
really,
adds
it's a wonderful
something.
thing.
It adds something to the experience.
So I would urge you, reach out to Richard, check out his website. There's lots of great stuff there. And if you're Leica curious, go to Leica website. That's Leica-camera.com, or you can reach us at tamarkin.com on the World Wide Web. We're also on Instagram and all kinds of different places. So I'd like to thank you all once again for joining us. Richard, thanks again for coming to Chicago. I really appreciate it, man. It's great to have you
Looking
here.
forward to all that we're doing the next 2 days.
It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. So thanks again for joining us. But before you log off, I want to share my screen one more time and make sure you write down these addresses and names so that we can all stay in touch. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great weekend.